Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is, of course, Charles Q. Banks, and I would like to welcome you back to my continuing review of Anthem, Part 2. I did Part 1 over a month ago, and I apologize for that, but I've finally gotten around to what I think is a conclusive concept of what the game is in the end. I think my first review, I'd played about 30 to 40 hours of gameplay, having not completed the campaign. Now I've played at least 60 to 70, if not more, and completed the cataclysm and the campaign. Got all of my different javelins unlocked and got them all to level 30, so we are Gucci gumdrops. I can definitely say I've seen most, if not all, of what Anthem has to offer. The only thing that I am missing is the second part of the cataclysm. The cataclysm is like a raid dungeon, kind of an open world raid area, which they implemented originally as one giant area with multiple bosses. And then they separated it into two chunks so that they could do the sundowning thing and have multiple quarterly cataclysms. So you'd have two different styles of cataclysms with the same bosses, but with separate areas cut off and different challenges cut off so that you have to go through each one. And I've only gone through the one cataclysm, but I get the general concept of the cataclysm. I beat it 5 times, 3 times on my own, twice with others. And I still am pretty miffed that you cannot choose on your own to go into the cataclysm by yourself, just like you can't go into free play by yourself, just like you can't do other dungeons by yourself. Fortresses, I should say. So, what do I have to say now that I've completed the game that I didn't say before? Well, last time I said something that I've been thinking about for a long time, which was that there are no game-breaking bugs or glitches in the game so far, and that's true. That is true. In my 40 hours of playing the game at that point, I had not come across any. Not to say I didn't come across any glitches. There were definitely some glitches, such as with enemies and such popping out of existence, but right after that, like a week after I said that in that review, I came across a glitch where my character literally said, I'm going into it's like a war zone, and then the screen goes white, explosions are going off, like gray clouds are coming past us on the screen, it's blinding white, and I cannot see where I'm going, cannot do anything. I tried to get out of the mission that I was going into, and I couldn't. I was locked, so I had to reset the game. So that's a pretty big glitch, I gotta say. I call game-breaking glitches anything that cause you to have to reset the game, or uninstall the game. That would be even worse. So server issues, game crashes, and things like that are game-breaking. But I hadn't come across any glitches like that until now, and then things like that have happened multiple times. Using the Colossus, for some reason, is easier to not get stuck on geometry. I never got stuck on geometry as the Colossus. But with the Ranger and the Interceptor, I got stuck on things constantly, and I even once got caught in the midst of some rocks that I could not get out of as the Ranger, and I just had to reset the game, which sucked because I was really trying to get my Ranger game up, and I ended up not really liking the playstyle of the Ranger anyway, but I did get it up to level 30, so I did my due diligence. But the real problem with the game is not really the glitches, not really the gameplay, or the online. It's just the kind of, well, 2 things. The story and the lack of content. Like I said before, the gameplay is amazing. It's great if you want some good old-fashioned third-person shooter, sci-fi, fantasy excitement in the style of Iron Man on the Xbox, then have at it. Iron Man or Mass Effect, and what are some other games? Third-person shooter stuff with Destiny, mashed in there a little bit, kind of a looter shooter, I would recommend the game, with the caveats that the story to the campaign is very disappointing, especially if you are a Bethesda fan. A fan of Mass Effect, especially. I am not. I've never played Mass Effect before. But anyone who would love that style of storytelling and the dialogue that branches out, or like The Witcher, as I've seen it said, it has many different dialogue options, and Bethesda is known for doing that style. And so for Anthem to not have that, like you never really have dialogue options that lead into different scenarios, like never. All it changes is slight like flavor text or dialogue from your main character that shows you a little bit more about him. I kind of expected him to be the silent protagonist, but he actually has a lot of character, and sometimes his character just comes out of nowhere. Like, sometimes he can be a real jerk, sometimes he can be completely normal, like, video game protagonist guy, and it's very confusing. There's no consistency to the main character, because you can choose, good guy or kind of bad guy at any given moment in the dialogue, but it doesn't actually change anything. So that is extremely disappointing. On top of that, there is very little character development, as I said, with the main protagonist, but also with the characters. I feel like the only characters that got any development were... Well, there are 3 main characters in the game outside of yourself. Halleck, who is like the leader of the Javelins, who is fallen from grace, apparently broke his leg or something, and now just works on Javelins. He then tries to bring back his old glory days and save the world himself, and fails, and you have to help him. Then there's Faye, who is his cipher, his psychic confidant, and the person who helps him in the field. Every Javelin has a cipher, someone who is psychically connected to them, and their Javelin who can sense the storms of the world and the cataclysms left behind by the ancient gods. And the story itself is quite convoluted. It doesn't do a great job of setting up the world. It just kind of throws you into it at the beginning, and you kind of have to try and figure out for yourself how the world works and who these characters are. But then the third character is Owen, and he is also, he's not quite a cipher, but he's not quite a Javelin pilot either. He just kind of helps you out and works for you as an assistant, and he wants to be a Javelin, a Lancer, someone who gets into the Javelin and goes and saves people. And he's not allowed to because of his crazy psychic abilities, and he becomes very, very sad, very depressed. Becomes quite the emo character after being kept away from being a Javelin pilot for so long, and he betrays you, and then tries to, become one of the lead heads of the Dominion who you were an enemy with, but then he turns coat on them as well and helps you out in the end, and then leaves. It's very strange character development for him that goes nowhere, because I feel like there was something to the end of his storyline that got cut and was expected to be developed upon in Anthem 2.0, which will never happen. Sad face. And there's so much potential to this game that is just not realized. And I think I said that beforehand. It's a beautiful mess. So each of the characters has some interesting things about them. I think I liked Owen when he was a good guy, but got more and more annoying as time went on. The dialogue is absolutely atrocious most of the time. Sometimes the witty banter can be actually witty. Other times it's just plain stupid. Written by 10-year-olds who watch too much cartoons. Too many, I should say. Saturday morning cartoons in the style of, I don't know, some really, really bad American ones. Or just badly dubbed anime. But your mileage may vary. I've heard of people in the Anthem community who absolutely love the dialogue and love all the characters and have favorites. I couldn't relate to any of them, although there was one lady with a Scottish accent, and I do love a Scottish accent, so that's nice to hear. But she didn't even have a character. But and I feel like that she should have. A lot of these characters just don't have much to them, unfortunately. The story itself is pretty difficult to understand. Reading the Wikipedia article on what the synopsis is, because I went to read it because I couldn't even remember what it was, really. It's just, you go out into the field, you find a bad guy, and they have this power, and they're going to use it to get this item, and you need to stop them from getting that item by going there and getting it before them. And then you both happen upon it at the same time, and they are able to take it anyway, and so you have to get it back by getting this other MacGuffin and bringing it to this place and getting this thing and finding these people. But oh, wait, this other band of brutes comes and attacks you. This other javelin unit comes and attacks you, and you have to try and assimilate and work together with another band of people who live beyond the walls, and it just goes from one thing to another, and there's really no through line most of the time. There are MacGuffins bandied about from one mission to another, and in the end, it's all about this super secret, like, mythological armor set of a past javelin pilot named Helena. And you want to get that armor set, but you can't, and Owen steals it, but he can't really pilot it perfectly, and he ends up not being able to save the world like he wanted to, and so he gives you back part of it, but it's not really enough to save the world yourself, and you're supposed to use the thing to... It's just too many steps to get to something that's really simple. Just get to the Eye of the Storm. I can't remember what it's even called anymore. And find the cenotaph and make sure that the Anthem of Creation doesn't drive you crazy, and beat the bad guy who turns into a giant demon man at the end. And you do that, and the game is over. But I have some problems with the way that the story is not only told, but what you do in the story. At the beginning of the game, you go through this wonderful tutorial. I think it's a great tutorial. It teaches you how to fly, how to fight, how to pick up artifacts and items, and deal with echoes and all this stuff, and shows you what can happen in a cataclysm. Just a little taste of it, though. So you are meant to deal with this interdimensional portal in the tutorial, and I hope you are following here. But in the tutorial, you do that, and this dimensional portal opens, and there are a bunch of creatures that come out and attack you. And you fight the creatures, but are also meant to close down the dimensional portal by getting these echoes and retrieving them and bringing them back to a certain place. You do this, but right before the dimensional portal closes, a giant, hulking gorilla thing comes out. An Ergo? No. I can't remember. And it attacks you, and it's like, oh my, is this going to be a boss fight? But then your character just shoots it and it dies in a cutscene. And I was like, oh, well, that's super anticlimactic. And then even previously, at the beginning of the game, the same thing happens. You see a Titan attacking everyone, and you're like, oh, I'm going to be able to fight the Titan. And then you go to where the Titan is, and then a cutscene happens, and the Titans are defeated in the cutscene. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I hope I see those in the future. The first mission I went through in this campaign, which apparently some of these missions are randomized, was a mission where you have to fight a Titan. And it's like, oh, no build-up, just kill it and it's done. First mission, easiest mission I played through, like taking candy from a baby. and so that entire experience of fighting a Titan was ruined for me because there was a big lead up which didn't allow you to fight the Titans in the beginning, and then it was just kind of an anticlimactic fight. Same thing with the gorilla monster. Weren't able to fight it at the beginning, and then halfway through the game, you're fighting it in a normal, contract that isn't really part of the campaign. You beat it, and it's like, oh, that was cool. I actually like fighting those gorilla monsters. And then in the campaign story mission, they're like, there's this crazy beast that has been roaming around. You have to fight it. It must be filled with shaper energy. And it's like, what is it going to be? Oh, it's one of the gorillas. Okay, then. I know how to deal with that because I fought with it before. And they try to build up these things later on. Same thing with the Titan. They introduced the Titan like 2/3 of the way through the campaign, and I've already fought like 5 herds of them by that time. So it's just a very poorly thought out campaign, both in terms of the pacing and the plot line itself. And these characters could be interesting. Like I said, Halleck has some good development. Owen is just weird. He goes through so many trials and tribulations, and you feel sorry for the guy at the end, even though he was a jerk for betraying you. But he does see the error of his ways, and he helps you a little bit, but then he leaves for some reason and doesn't come back and doesn't become your friend again. It's very strange. But then with Faye, I feel like she had a lot of build-up because of her experience with the Anthem of Creation, this big psychic energy that the planet is universal in the planet, and it speaks to very well-developed ciphers. And so she's been having issues, PTSD, with the Anthem of Creation ever since the inciting incident, the giant cataclysm that caused the plotline of the present day to begin. And so you go to where the Anthem of Creation is focusing its energy, and where the bad guy is, and where all the cataclysms are happening. And there's really no struggle with her and the Anthem of Creation. I mean, she kind of yells a little bit about it, but that's it. And there's this big build-up throughout the entire game. They're afraid of going to the Anthem of Creation because of what could happen to her, and nothing happens. She's able to control it, and you win. And that same kind of disappointment that I had with the build-up for the bosses beforehand is the same with the main boss in the end. And it's really bad. The boss fight in the end is just really terrible. It's basically just a harder version of a Titan fight, with some, bullet hell elements to it, which is kind of fun. But you get him down to 1/3 of his health bar, and you're like, okay, I'm getting this. We're close. And then the cutscene plays, and your friends fly a Strider, which is a giant, like an AT-AT walker. Looks almost exactly the same. The AT-AT walker busts through a wall and rams him right before you're about to get into the 3rd phase of the fight, and kills him. And so you never really got to beat the boss. It takes away so much satisfaction from you that the ending is just kind of a non-entity. The story itself is kind of a non-thing because there is no climactic conclusion that makes you feel like all of these pieces came together in a satisfying way. It's just kind of things happened, things didn't work, some things worked, and, you expected to be able to beat the boss, and we did. Didn't expect to be able to deal with the Anthem easily, but we did, and everything's good in the end. Although they did set up for Anthem 2.0 with one of the ancient enemies being found as a corpse inside the walls, and it's like, oh no, the baddies are back. But then, of course, there's no further campaign to go on. And I feel like having to deal with an ancient enemy, an army of aliens, would be far more interesting than what we have now, just kind of a random assortment of creatures and bandits that you fight. Is kind of not too interesting. There are 3 or 4 different enemy types throughout the game. I mean, big generic enemy types. There are the fauna of the world who are influenced by the evil energies, making them all rampage. And then there are Scars and Dominion, and like I said, the bandits. So that's 4 major enemy types. And there isn't a whole lot of enemy variety in the end, unfortunately. But fighting them is all very fun, you know? Like I said, unlocking weapons and finding better versions. Finding the masterwork weapons is very satisfying. There are new weapons after you've reached level 30 that the higher level they get, the more interesting they get. They have cool, colorful skins to them. Some of the animations for the blasts of the rifles or the guns look entirely different, have much more flair to them. And then the legendaries on top of that are far more powerful than that. So you can really, something I've always wanted in any game, really, is to be able to feel like you are overpowered. And Anthem definitely gives that to you in spades. So my conclusion is, just like last time, the gameplay is where Anthem shines. It's a good game. It's not a great game. The graphics are great. They're not Ghost of Tsushima, but they're close enough for me, and it's really just a shame. All of these things that were leading up to greatness never had the chance to shine, and it's because of the blasted marketing that lied to everyone, telling everyone that it was something other than what it was. If it had more modest marketing, showed real in-engine trailers, game trailers, and gameplay, then people wouldn't have been so disappointed. But of course, EA wanted to sell the next big masterpiece game that would be better than everything else, and they marketed that way, even though the game wasn't finished when they started marketing it that way. So it's just a really sad state of affairs. I really like this game, but the crashes, the server issues, and the glitches, as well as the lack of content, kind of keep me from wanting to go back after I have spent so much time in it already. And that time that I spent in it will be a fond memory, and maybe once in a while I'll want to have that feeling again of flying around in a beautiful, well-lit, sunny, open world filled with monsters and, jungle biomes on an alien planet in a mech suit. And that's really all that this game is. It's a shooter, it's fun, it's cool, and that's really all a game should be, is fun. So anyway, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching my review for Anthem Part 2. My score has not changed. It's still a 6. The story and the cataclysms could have elevated it, but there's really not much more to say even about the cataclysm. Just some more puzzles that were unnecessary. So a really good boss fight at the end of the cataclysm, but was it enough to save the game for me? Not at all. Not at all. I enjoyed what exists in Anthem, and maybe I'll play the second half of Anthem's Cataclysm once that resurfaces. As long as they keep supporting the game, then I may indeed play it. But yeah, thanks again so much for watching. God bless, and fare thee well.